you go to 2 Samuel chapter 2 with me, and we'll get to that in just a moment. I want to give you the overall setup here, because we've got to go back into the Old Testament, and to get where we are, we have to understand where they have been. 2 Samuel is the beginning of David's reign as king over Israel. Before he got there were some basic things that happened. And to get that, let's just review the Old Testament. The parts leading up to this, of course, the world is created. That was the first part of Genesis, in case you missed that part. The world is created. We go from there. We have Adam, Noah, Abraham, and then we have Joseph, and then we have Moses, and the people of Israel come out of slavery in Egypt. They form a country that's supposed to have God as its king, but eventually they decide that they would like to have their own king that they can actually see and put their hands on. Samuel is the prophet and the leader of the nation at the time, and that's why 1 and 2 Samuel are named after him, because he is kind of the lead character at the beginning and the mover of the basic things that goes on. And he anoints as king over Israel initially a man by the name of Saul. Saul is the first king over Israel. Saul is found. God speaks to Samuel, gives him an indication that I'm going to send you the man who is to be king. And Saul is that man. And in 1 Samuel chapter 11, we see Saul's first action as king is to go and to rally the people of Israel to go and fight a man by the name of Nahash the Ammonite. Now, we tend to think of Israel as this. We remember that Israel crosses at the beginning of Joshua. They cross the Jordan River into the Promised Land. And so we tend to think of the Promised Land as all being on this side of the Jordan River. But if you go back and you look in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, 2.5 tribes of the people of Israel had decided that they liked this side of the Jordan River. And they decided they wanted to stay there. And that was the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh. In case you want to fill that in on your Old Testament bingo sheet, there are 2.5 tribes there. They stayed on this side of the river. Everybody else moved to this side of the river. Saul becomes king, but what's been going on this side of the river, because this is where the Ammonites live, is also over here, is their king, ruler, dictator, whatever you'd like to call him, by the name of Nahash, has been going around conquering the Israelite cities that are on this side of the river. And basically he does this. He comes to a city and says, surrender. And they say, no. He says, if you don't surrender, I'm going to destroy your city. They say, okay, we'll surrender. But keep in mind, if you surrender, I'm going to gouge out the right eye of every man in town. So it's either fight and probably get killed because the little cities don't have enough to defend themselves, or it's to go around and have your eye out. You say, that sounds pretty bad. It is bad. And in fact, it marked a couple of things. Nahash was able to say, I'm in charge here, because everybody else is crippled and maimed. And it also hurts your ability to be a soldier in battle. The way that you shot a bow and arrow, which was one of the main weapons, and close one eye and shoot. So it would interrupt all of that. And so Nahash comes up to the city of Jabesh Gilead and says, going to conquer you and destroy you. Or you have to surrender, and this is what we'll do. And the people of Jabesh Gilead said, give us a week to think about it. And so they sent messengers out, and their messengers reached Saul. Saul has just become king. He says, this is terrible. So Saul gathers the army. All those who are with him are around him. And he goes and he delivers the people of Jabesh Gilead from Nahash the Ammonite. And they're very happy with this, as you can well imagine that they would be. Saul, however, turns out to be a pretty lousy king. If you read 1 Samuel, you'll realize this. Saul is not a good king. Saul's actually a pretty terrible king, to be honest. God gives specific commands, and Saul ignores them. Saul abuses the power of his office. Saul turns out to be wicked. He turns out to be angry and vengeful. He does not put up with his political enemies. He gets bitter and jealous at the people that help him. David helps deliver his kingdom, becomes one of his strong generals, one of his leaders and his helps, and yet Saul is out to kill him. In fact, much of 1 Samuel involves the feud between David and Saul that is entirely one-sided. David has nothing, no effort, he's putting no effort into getting rid of Saul, and yet Saul is out to dispose of David. We see Saul reject God, and so therefore God rejects Saul as king over Israel, and God does send Samuel to pick David to be the next king. Yet we even see David have the opportunity a couple of times to dispose of Saul, and he says, no, I'm going to trust that God is going to put me in the kingdom when it's my time. 1 Samuel ends with the death of Saul in battle against the Philistines on the slopes of Mount Gilboa. And that summarizes that history, and I could happily spend hours on that with you. If you would like to do that, we can plan that time, and we'll do it in more comfortable chairs with snacks at hand. But those are the things that happen, and so David becomes king. The Philistines, though, behaved as armies tended to behave in those days, and they took the body of Saul, and they hung it up as a trophy to say, hey, look what we did. The men of Jabesh Gilead found out about it. Now keep in mind, Jabesh Gilead is on this side of the river. The kingdom of Israel is on, for the most part, this side of the river. Mount Gilboa is over here, and the land of the Philistines, it's all the way over here at the piano. Well, not really. There's no piano there. But there's a huge amount of territory here. And most of Israel is between Jabesh Gilead and the land of the Philistines. But the men of Jabesh Gilead find out that the Philistines have hung Saul's body up on a wall. Most likely they have completely stripped it of armor and everything else, and they have nailed him up on the wall so that they could make fun of him and watch him rot. The men of Jabesh Gilead say, this is not acceptable. And so, in the middle of the night, a small group of men, a small group of warriors from that city, make their way across the river, fight their way, sneak their way probably through Israel, sneak up to the walls in the land of the Philistines, take down the body of Saul, take him back and give him an honorable burial. And then we come to what I've given you for today's text in 2 Samuel chapter 2, beginning with verse 4. Then the men of Judah came, and there anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, it was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul. David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead and said to them, may you be blessed of the Lord, because you have shown this kindness to Saul your Lord, and have buried him. And may the Lord show loving kindness and truth to you. And I also will show this goodness to you, because you have done this thing. Now therefore let your hands be strong and be valiant, for Saul your Lord is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. David sends a message to the people of Jabesh Gilead and says, you did a good thing. What you've done is right. You've shown honor and respect to Saul. And today, as we contemplate Memorial Day, I would say that David honors the men of Jabesh Gilead because they held an appropriate memorial for Saul. And it's appropriate for us as God's people to recognize and honor those that God has used to provide for us. It was through Saul that God provided freedom for the men of Jabesh Gilead from Nahash the Ammonite. And it is through the men and women who across the past several hundred years have given their lives for our freedom that God has provided us the ability to meet here freely. That God has given us the freedom that we have, that we are able to stop and enjoy what those years ago were listed as God-given rights, things that we are given and endowed by our Creator. It's appropriate for us to stop and remember and to honor those folks. And it doesn't make those people perfect and holy. There's nothing you could do to make Saul turn out to have been a good guy all of his life. We don't minimize Saul's faults. David doesn't do that here. He simply says this was a good thing. But then he says to the men of Jabesh Gilead, it's time to move forward. We can spend a great deal of our time as God's people living in this country focused on the past. We could spend a great deal of our time looking at how things have been and how things were and what things were good and how things used to be great. And look around us and say, things aren't so great anymore. We can look and say, oh, well, this was once wonderful and now there's a problem here and there's a problem there. And we can dwell in that past. And the men of Jabesh Gilead could have dwelt in that past and said, things were good with Saul. Things were good for us. Because once Saul delivered them from Nahash, the Ammonites didn't give Israel any more problems the rest of the reign of Saul. All the problems came from the Philistines. The Ammonites were over here, close to Jabesh Gilead. The Philistines were all the way over there. The men of Jabesh had no problems from the Philistines. There was a river between them. They were pretty much safe. We could spend our time pining for those things, but our question needs to be, what do we do going forward? Saul is dead. The past is gone. It's appropriate to stop and remember that. But now the question becomes, what do we do next? David says to the men of Jabesh Gilead, what I think is an appropriate thing for us. First of all, he says, now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth to you. Folks, we remain people who are blessed to live with the grace, the loving kindness, and the truth of God available to us. And we should see that and we should know that. God has shown us the grace that we're able to be here today. There are people around this world that don't have the ability to just get up and go where they want to go. They can't get up and go to church. Their health may have failed them. Their government may be oppressing them. Their situation may be difficult for them. There are people in Moore, Oklahoma that would like to have gotten up today and gone to church, but they can't go anywhere and do much of anything because a giant tornado destroyed their town. For the second time in recent memory, it's become quite the problem in this one community. In 1999, there's folks that had their homes destroyed in 1999 by a tornado who lost their homes again this week. Not through any fault of their own, because we live in a broken world where bad things happen to people. Tornadoes have been afflicting folks for a long, long time. You look at the first chapter of the book of Job, when the report comes in about what kills Job's children. It says that they were in the house having dinner, and a wind struck the four corners of the house, and it fell down and killed them all. And I know Bible scholars that hassle over the Hebrew there to try to determine what kind of wind it was, but y'all, I live in the South. I know what kind of wind can hit all four corners of a house. Y'all do too. It's those winds that swirl. And even all the way back to those days, we see suffering caused by natural disasters like that. We're blessed and graced to be here, not because of anything that we deserve. There's nothing that makes us better, but because the grace of God allows us to be here. May God continue to show us His loving kindness and truth. May we be aware of His loving kindness, of His grace, and of His truth. We have the Word of God available to us. May we have that. Now, therefore, what do we do? Let your hands be strong and be valiant. David sends to the men of Jabesh Gilead, let's be strong together. We have strength for a reason. say, I don't have much strength. The men of Jabesh Gilead didn't think that they had much. It wasn't that long ago that they were threatened by a man who wanted to destroy their community and gouge out their right eyes. They had to reach out for help. There are times that we have to reach out for help, but it does not mean that we cannot then find within us the strength to do that which God has put in front of us. Be strong. Be as strong as we can be by the power of God. Be strong to do what He's given us to do. We all face differing challenges, but we need to be strong as we face them. You may be facing parenthood. You need to be strong. Because being a mother, being a father is not for the weak. Because they just keep growing. It doesn't get any easier. Be strong. You may be facing the fact that you're growing, that the years are clicking past you, and different choices come in front of you. Be strong. You may have challenges within your family. You have health challenges. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's somebody just that you know and you care about. And because of cancer, heart attacks, whatever other challenges, you have to change the way you've done things. You have to adjust. And the person who's always been the provider and been the rock, somebody else has to step up and handle that. And if it's you that's having to take a step back, you've got to be strong enough to say, I can do this, and let somebody else take care of it. And it may be that it's you that has to step up and be the strong one and say, I'm going to do this. I'll take that responsibility. I'll handle that issue. Be strong. You may be looking around the church saying, I remember a day when we had this program, or we had this activity, or we had these kids here, or we had this going on here, and we reached people. Somebody needs to do that. Be strong. Be the one that does it. Next week at Vacation Bible School, there'll be kids that need to be taught. There'll be kids that need to be one-on-one shown the love and the grace of God's mercy through the hands of people that will care about them. You may need to be strong and be the one who comes and does that. There may be other things ahead of you. You've got to be strong. The world that we live in is shifting rapidly away from a God-honoring society and a God-honoring culture. Somebody's going to ask you your opinion. You're going to have to be strong and stand for what God says. You're going to have to be strong and put the time into knowing God's truth so that you know what God says. Be strong. Don't give up. It may simply be this, that you turn on the news every day and you see the things that happen. You see the tragedies. You see the difficulties. You see everything from 17-year-olds making bombs in their garage to blow up their schools, to old folks abandoned by their families. Wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes in various and diverse places. Volcanoes. I saw this past week reading the Science News that it looks like Mount St. Helens is filling back up, they think it might be ready to erupt again sometime soon. You look at all these things and you've just lost heart. Because every time one bad thing manages to get beaten down, another one crops up here. Just the time that this problem in our society, that we squish this drug, somebody starts using that drug. That we fix this issue, somebody messes with this one. That we think that this is okay and then this falls apart. Be strong. Within you is the power of the Spirit of God. Be strong and hold on. Be strong and be valiant. Walking with Jesus is not for the scared. It's okay to be a little bit scared and intimidated, but be valiant enough to keep your eyes on Christ. Be valiant enough to keep your focus on our leader. Because where we're going as we walk through this world is not on a cakewalk. It's not a simple stroll through an amusement park. It's not a trip around a golf course. But it's walking into battle. It's recognizing that we live with the Philistines on one side and the Ammonites on the other. It's recognizing that we have problems that will beset us, that we have difficulties that will attack us, that there are challenges out there. But that our call is to be valiant, to fix our eyes on Christ and say, I'm going to walk with Him. David says to the men and women of Jabesh Gilead, that the Lord has made me king. So follow me. But we follow one who is even higher than David. In fact, the book of Hebrews speaks of that David was his servant. We follow the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And to be valiant for us is simply to do this, is to follow Him. To fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, and to do what He has told us to do. Even when it scares us, even when it terrifies us. Even if it causes us to do things that have people